Number 4. The world doesn't need my diagnosis. It needs my help. This nation doesn't need another diagnosis of what we should or shouldn't do. You know, it doesn't need a sideline, coach anymore. It needs not just my diagnosis and saying this is what's wrong. It needs me and you to get up and go do something about it.
Right.
I mean, we have to put feet to the diagnosis. And so I'm trying. It's called helps. Some of it's called, the Bible is clear that there is a ministry called helps ministry. And I don't know if you know how, but I think it's needed worse than apostle, prophet, evangelist. But right now, the thing that we're deficit in is the ministry of helps. I think the world is crying help, and God has put in the church the helps ministry to help. And the problem with helping is you're usually not, if you're in a helps position or if you help, you're not the number one person. You're the helper that's helping the number one person. So I don't want to go be the president. I want to go to be the IBM guy. I don't want to go be Pharaoh. I don't want to go be what, but I would like to be the one to help with that, for them to succeed, to be what God has called them to be, so that God can better shape this nation and this civilization, our generation, for something that is extraordinary that probably hasn't lived since in the last 500 or 600 years. I really believe that we are at the very edge of a Renaissance moment that will reshape everything. It's critical. This is critical. People don't need a lecture from me. They need to find a friend in me. They don't need a lecture from me. They need to find a friend in me. I don't know about you, but I'm done with lectures. People telling me, maybe you're done with that. And I'm not looking for another source of information from someone or someone to enhance my capacity to understand something. That's all right. That's wonderful. Teaching is a big part of the church, but we need friendship as much or more than when you just need another teaching or just another gifting. Listen, people don't need your input and your information. People are looking for friends and friendship. And I've said it over and over again. Friends are Jesus in disguise. We're saying God send revival, and he brings someone in front of us. God send your answer, he brings someone in front of us. God send this, God help me this. Then someone says, hey, what can I do for, that Jesus and the way he manifests himself are friends in disguise. And Joseph was a friend to Pharaoh. Joseph was a friend to a butler and a baker in the bottom of a prison. Joseph was a friend of Benjamin. Joseph became a friend to his whole family. Joseph, more than just this amazing man in the bottom of this prison that was lied about and that was thrown into prison, that was done wrong, had this sense of forgiveness in his heart and friendship in his heart, that he held on to nothing other than the capacity to be a friend of the world and make the place that God had put him a better place. Amen.
Can I ask you a question, Larry?
Please.
Because you made a couple of statements about, I'm sorry.
I was hoping you'd do that.
The gift of help.
Yes.
What I thought I heard you say was you see it existing to serve those who are in leadership, those who are.
I do leadership world. I'm speaking outside of the walls of the church too.
Okay. So when we think about like maybe somebody that walks with the gift of healing or the gift of teaching, we go like, oh, Randy Clark is a gift of, walks in healings, miracles, signs and wonders. Bill, incredible teaching gift.
Yeah.
You, incredible teaching gift. Who would you say someone that we would all know walks in the gift of help?
I don't know
like a reference point.
I don't really know anybody really wants to do that. Because it is not being the visible, it's not being the seen, it's not being on top. It's the foundation that holds up the building. It's the helps. It's the one that does the unpraised parts of the work. It is that's hard.
So it says apostle, prophet, teacher, evangelist, right? Those with the gift of administration and those with the gift of help.
Yeah.
Can I just throw in one little nugget?
Please.
Because that really excited me, because you don't hear a lot of people preach about that. Yeah. Those two, they go apostle, prophet, teacher, evangelist.
Yeah.
Or people that are like lukewarm, they're like, I'll just have the gift of help, or I'll just have the gift of, administration. Like, I'm really good at lining things up. That's not what those gifts are.
No.
At all. Like, just because you are a natural administrator doesn't mean that you have the gift of administration. And if you just because you're a natural administrator or you're like really helpful, doesn't mean that you are walking in that gift.
True.
Because I need, in ministry, and you know this, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need administrators. We need people that serve and help. And we've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds go through Iris.
Yeah.
And what I look for are people that actually look at the gift of admin and the gift of help the same way that I look at my calling. They treat it with holiness, reverence. It is a priority in their life. It isn't like a natural skill set. Would you want to just sit with a speaker or sit under a teacher that just has a natural teaching skill set? Or do you want somebody that's like anointed, called? They treat it as something set apart unto the Lord. So I just think just because you might be like, oh, I'm a helper. I like helping people. I bake cookies or whatever. You know, I chop wood and mow lawns. Like, that's not what it is. It's actually something that you treat with the same reverence that you would expect Larry to teach carry the prophetic.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So.
And help build. I mean, in the Old Testament, when they rebuilt the wall and the temple, etc., they all went to the top. They all built it together. Brick and mortar. They helped. There was eventually a king. There was eventually prophets, etc. But it was much built on the ministry of help. By the way, an analogy you preached a month ago about I think Acts 28. Am I right?
Yeah.
Acts 28 about Paul's shipwreck. I thought this was always interesting. King James, New King James says it this way: when the ship was coming apart, I remember that, and they put helps around. That word helps actually is the English word taken from the Greek word. It means ropes, and they were ropes and binding. So the old gospel ship is coming apart, and the ship that's taken him to his destiny. But it could not happen without helps. And said at risk of their own life, they put helps and they bound up the ship and they wrapped the ship so that it wouldn't come apart in the storm. That's what helps is.
You're getting me fired up. And they cut off the life raft.
And they cut off.
Which is the opposite of what somebody who has a natural skill set would say.
So that no one can escape.
They threw the food over.
Yep.
And you can be like, oh, well, the boat's heavy. No, like they needed to survive. And he goes, get rid of all of it. Like eat and get rid of everything. Yep. And they were on that thing 14 days. So, and I think it parallels with the word of wisdom, right? Where it's information given to you by God for a situation that God is speaking to take it further, to bless it, to grow it. But it doesn't come from your natural wisdom. It can parallel with it. It can fall along with that. But you need to look at apostle, prophet, teacher, evangelist. Those are the gifts of administration. Those are the gift of help as they treat it unto a calling. It is a holy thing. It isn't a skill. It is a calling. And when you have people that function, they go, listen, we're going to throw the ropes around. Yep. And you're like, hold on. This is a massive boat with 300 people. And you're talking about like some old timey rotten ropes. They're not going to hold it together. Right. And I could go on and on because most of the time, the solutions that God gives in those situations through those ordained, I can come up with 5 examples. Take the boys' loaves and fishes, right? But how far will they go among so many? That's what he says, right? He's like, but this is the solution that God has. And even in the middle of it, he's like, but I don't even think it's going to work, but this is what I have. So there has to be faith. And right before he asked the disciple, he goes, how would you feed all these people? He goes, 8 months' wages wouldn't buy enough for each one to have a bite. He actually was a numerical administrator. He answered the question correctly. It was a question about finance. He answered it accurately, and he was wrong. Being accurate in the natural isn't always the goal. Yeah. Yeah. Right? Good. Yeah. So when you talk about helps and all these gifts, it's like people just go, oh, well, they just kind of settle into their comfort zone. Heck, no. Like it needs to be treated with holiness and devotion as you would expect any prophet, apostle, teacher, evangelist to carry that gift well. It is not a gift that you just kind of like coast on and be like, oh, I'm really gifted. No. Yeah. Sorry.
No, that's great. I like it. So since we're there, we took a little dip. So the ship finally did come apart.
It did.
It did. It came apart. Yeah. So you're going to use an analogy as where we're at now. We'll set Joseph aside for a second. I like this. In that the ship came apart. It says, and they all made it to land on different pieces of the ship. I kind of like that. Yeah, different pieces of the ship. I mean, everybody's not going to get there the same way. You know, you had the Word of Faith ship, and you had the Methodist ship, and then you had the the prophetic piece of wood, but they all made it ashore. They did. And I thought this when you said that, I thought this was interesting too when Paul, before the great healing happened on the islands, with the chief of the island and the others that were healed, he built a fire, and the snake came out of the fire. There's a snake in every fire. There's a snake in every fire. And the way I know there's a fire, if there's a snake. And there's big snake, big viper. I mean, there's a big snake loose in this nation, this earth right now. That tells me there's a fire. And so what do? He shook it back into the fire. He put in other words, the snake itself got burned up in the fire. And whatever is happening negatively in this world, it will be cast back into that fire. And because that is if we have the same capacity that Paul did to shake it off into the fire, didn't scream and run and try to cast it out. He shook it back into the fire.
And so speaking to this, he goes from I could talk about this forever, so I'm not. He goes from being a prisoner to being captain of the boat to basically taking over the whole island. So you're talking about people having doors open up, being launched into their destiny. This was Paul was a prisoner at the beginning.
He was.
But on Malta, he becomes a god. The Bible says that he shook the snake back into the fire. He suffered no ill effects. And they looked at him and go, you're a god. And he's like, giddy up. Let me pray for some people. And they bring him in to the top mansion on the entire island. And so like you can push your door open and work your way into a mansion, but it's totally different when God brings you there through obedience. And what I love about where did the snake come from? The snake came because Paul, after he saved 300 men from obedience, crashed on the island and he serves. He goes around and collects firewood. So Paul takes the role of a servant, gets bit because of that. And we can't neglect that. Our job in all of this is to serve. It isn't to be at the top. If the Lord wants to bring you to the nicest mansion in all of a nation, he will do that faster than you can, better than you can. The Bible says they celebrated, they entered into a feast or a celebration for 3 days. They were entertained hospitably. Ain't no party like a Malta party. And that was, so like everybody's in the middle of the storms like, I just want a break. God will give you a bigger break when he opens up the door, not when you just like, oh, I just need to step out for a little while because ministry's too much or this is too much. No, in obedience, no matter what's going on, he knows exactly what you need when you need it. And he will open up the doors into the biggest mansions.
Yes. I thought before you into that, I thought it was interesting that before the ship even broke apart, Paul said, an angel of the Lord visited me tonight. He said, there shall be loss of the ship, but not one soul. And that's what I think we're trying to say. New doors open to him. There's a new door open for us. There may be a loss of the ship, but not our own lives. The ship is going down. The ship may come apart, whether it be the economy, it doesn't matter. No harm, it said, but no harm shall come to anyone. But the ship is going, Paul said, trust me, because an angel stood before me tonight and told me the ship is going to break. See, we're praying for the ship. The angel said, don't worry about the ship. And if it does come apart, little pieces of it are there for you to get to land on. But anyway.
Can I just throw one little nugget in there and then I'm done? I promise.
Sure, it'll cost you, but go ahead. Yes.
Before Paul gets on the boat, he says this, men, I can see that our voyage is going to be disastrous and bring great loss to a ship and cargo and to our own lives as well.
And he was wrong.
And he was wrong.
Yes. Yep.
Anyone can look at the calendar, can look at the weather, and go, it's going to be bad. That's not the prophetic.
Right.
It's not. Anyone can doubt. That's easy. But who's the one that listens to the word of the Lord, that listens to the angelic visitation, that listens to the dream that he has? The Lord speaks to him 3 times on that ship.
Yep.
3 times, 3 different ways. And he gets rejected for obedience. The first time he goes, hey, the Lord said it's going to get bad. They're like, shut up. And then when it gets bad, they come to him. Rejection is not a sign that you've missed him.
Say it again.
Rejection
is not
a sign that you missed him
Right.
if your focus is on the praise of man.
Right.
If you actually are obedient, he's in the rejection. I'm turning it off.
Okay.
Let's get off.
We'll get back to this. And yes, I like that. Like, yes, that is an unscripted detour. I like those.